There's so many different opinions about what's the best diet we need to follow, so many different opinions around nutrition. But there's one thing that most people agree on, and that is that vegetables are good for our health. However, I think another thing that we all would also strongly agree on is that vegetables don't necessarily taste as good as, for example, chocolate or junk food. And that is why today we're going to go over 4 tips that will make it easier for us to eat more vegetables, even though it's so difficult sometimes. So the first tip would be to decrease the friction between your intention and your action. Now, the way you can do this with things that are healthy for you is basically just by putting, for example, fruit somewhere where you can see it immediately. Then you will very quickly notice that you're going to eat more fruit or more vegetables, depending on what you make easier to reach, simply because it's convenient. For example, James Clear once noticed that if beer was in the back of the fridge, he would hardly consume any beer. However, if he put beer where you could easily see it in the fridge, he would consume way more. And when he noticed that, he then of course made sure that he only put beer in the back so that he'd consume less. And he also noticed that when he put apples somewhere where he could easily see them, he would quickly eat more healthily. And then the second tip would be to change how you see yourself. Ask questions that actually support your goals. So with questions, James Clear basically means, in our context of being as healthy as possible, asking yourself in any given situation, what would a healthy person do right now? And what James Clear likes about this is that it's not context dependent. So basically, discipline structure is all good. The problem, though, is that when the situation changes, because, for example, if you've become a parent, or you've changed your job, or anything like that, or you've moved to another house, your circumstances are going to change. And when there's not that structure anymore, you're going to find it more difficult in this new context to adapt. However, questions, because they're so context independent, they work under any circumstance. And when it comes to your identity, so basically what this question would do, of asking yourself what a healthy person would do, is having this identity of you being someone who cares about their health. And as Niall explained, the reason why, for example, I'm not telling anyone to be any sort of religion and follow any lifestyle here, this is just to explain how what we think about ourselves actually influences the actions we take. So for example, vegans will find it very easy not to have dairy products or meat because they identify as people who don't eat meat or dairy products and so forth. And also vegetarians, they would also not have meat because they just don't see themselves as a person who would do that. Or Jews and Muslims wouldn't eat pork. That doesn't align with how they see themselves. And Robert Cialdini, he's a psychology professor, he often talks about how we as human beings have this tendency to want to act in alignment with who we think we are, simply because we want to have this view of ourselves that we are consistent and that we do what we think is right, and that we feel that any sort of change kind of proves that we were wrong. And of course, human beings, we all want to be right. And then the third tip would be that we shouldn't make this goal of eating more vegetables too vague. So what most people would probably do if they wanted to eat more vegetables is just tell themselves that from now on they're going to eat more vegetables. But the problem with that, this is so vague, and therefore we don't know whether we're actually living up to this new goal or not, because it's so vague, because we haven't set any clear rules. And the only reason we can actually know whether we are eating more vegetables than we currently are is obviously if we know how many vegetables we're currently eating, as stupid as it sounds. So if you want to know how you're going to eat more vegetables, or what eating more vegetables looks like, you would have to, at least for some days maybe, track how many vegetables you're eating. Now, I definitely don't recommend tracking your food in a very detailed way or counting calories and all that kind of stuff, because I think that very quickly can lead to lots of eating disorders. So that's not what I'm saying here. But if you want to eat more vegetables, it could be helpful to vaguely know how much you're eating right now. And then also see how many more vegetables you want to eat from then on. And then the fourth one would be to use implementation intention. So just say how much you're going to eat or which vegetable you're planning to eat when. Now, if you want to know more tips, if you want to know how you can build good habits in general and not only how to eat more vegetables, you can watch this video here.